Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue my series on doing first-person graphics, and in particular, we're going to look at taking a pattern and transforming it in all of the ways that we need so that we can use it to display all of the blocks that we might need to display. So this is what we had when we finished last time, roughly, except that we didn't have this. We didn't have this roof. I had the this floor pattern here, but I copied it onto the roof. And the way I did that was fairly straightforward. I just went right-click, duplicate layer, and that creates a new identical layer. And then I went layer, transform, flip vertically. And then I also went layer, transform, flip horizontally. That makes it a little bit less obvious that it's just a copy because the same patterns aren't on the roof, or they're not on the parts of the roof directly above the same bits on the floor, if that makes sense. I mean, if you looked at all closely, you'd immediately see that it's the same pattern but flip left to right, but it just makes it a bit less in your face obvious. However, I might be getting rid of this pattern because I've made a new pattern that I like better, and if they don't work together, I'll change the floor pattern to make it compatible with this one. So let me show you the pattern that I've made for the walls. So this is quite straightforward. I just filled it all in a dark grey. Then I got the pencil tool. I set it to a size above 1 pixel. I think it was 8 pixels. And then I hand drew these shapes in a lighter grey. I suppose it's vaguely reminiscent of perhaps stones held together with mortar or something like that. And I'm going to use that as the basic pattern for the walls. Now, how did I know what size I wanted to make this? Well, what I did is I looked at this layer here because this is the biggest of the rectangles that we're going to make. Of the shapes, there's two shapes. We've got the rectangle shape, and then we have this distorted parallelogram shape, I think it is here. But I started with a rectangle shape. This is the biggest rectangle shape that we're going to need. I clicked on this, the fuzzy select tool. I clicked it, oops, I made sure I was on the right layer, clicked in there, and then I went image, crop to selection, and then I went image, scale, and that tells me the current size of the area within that rectangle, 119 by 89. And so I knew that I had to start a 119 by 89 pattern. And also I made sure to go Command Z or Control Z because we don't want to stay on that cropped situation. We want to revert to how it was, of course. So you want a pattern that is fairly symmetrical right to left. It doesn't have to be a mirror image. This isn't a mirror image, but it's sort of they're roughly the same size and shape over here as they are over here. And why is that? Well, let me give you an example. Let's say we have a very unsymmetrical pattern. It's mostly blue, and then there's a little line of red. And let's say I, the player, my character is facing north, and I'm looking at these walls that are to either side of me, and I can see, okay, I'm sort of next to the blue bit, and at the far end, there's this red line. Well, let's say that I then turn around 180 degrees. I turn directly in the opposite direction. Well, this red line shouldn't be in front of me anymore. It should now be behind me because I've turned around. So, as a game designer, the game designer would need to do one of two things. Either they have two sets of graphics, one to be displayed when I'm facing north and one to be displayed when I'm facing south, and then perhaps west would be the same as north or whatever. But you need at least two separate sets of graphics, which of course is more work. Or you just display the same graphic each time, and you run the risk of me noticing, well, hang on, the red line is always in front of me, and yet when I see that wall straight on, it's only blue with a single red line, and that doesn't make any sense. So if you make the we'll get rid of that now. If you make the picture sort of reasonably symmetrical from left to right, then the player is less likely to notice that. They might still notice it, but at least it makes it less likely. So we have this first pattern. We are going to need to do two things. Firstly, we're going to need to shrink it because we have smaller rectangles. And we're also going to need to distort it because we have these other shapes which we want to fit the same pattern. And of course, having distorted it, we need to have that distortion in in fact, three different sizes, because we've got another partial parallelogram there, and we've got another smaller parallelogram there, and also flip it left to right, because on the other side we've got all the same, except that they're flipped left to right. And also, we might want to make the smaller ones darker, because this is a dungeon. We have this darkness. We've decided that more than 2 squares ahead, you can't see anything. Well, that suggests that the light source there's no lights in the dungeon, that instead it's the player carrying a torch or carrying a lamp or something. And therefore, things that are further away should be darker. So we might want to add darkness as well. And I'll show you how to do that as we go. So let's first look at shrinking it. So we have the rectangle that's this size. Now we want the one that's this size. Well, first we need to find out what that second size is. So let's do that. And we're going to do that the same way. We click in it. We select all of the internal bit. We crop to selection. We press scale, but we're not going to actually scale the image. We're just going to read that it's 58 by 43. All right, 58 by 43. And then we Control Z out of that. All right, so let's make a copy of this. And that's pretty straightforward. You go Command or Control A, Command or Control C. So that selects all and then copies whatever's selected. And then we create from a clipboard, and we'll get, doesn't look identical because it's zoomed in differently, but that is actually an identical picture. If we zoom in, we can see that, yeah, it's the same. But once we get the zoom right, yeah, they're the same picture. So this one, we want it to be 58 by 43. And if we change this one to 58, because that rectangle is the same proportion, it should automatically turn to 43. Now, we don't want to do what is usually the default, which is cubic interpolation. That will make it look fuzzy, and that's not right. Well, that's not what we want. What we want is this one, which is no interpolation. That'll keep it pixely. And you can see that there's there's a couple of cases where it's joined two rocks together because the gap between them was too slim for it to do anything with it. So I might change that by hand. So I'll use the eyedropper. That allows you to select a color by clicking on the screen. So we click on a screen, and then I'll use the pencil tool and reduce it to 1 pixel and just hand draw in the gaps again. So there you go. We have a smaller version of that original. Now, if we wanted to make it darker, we would go. Actually, sorry, we need to make one of the colours black. So we choose black. If there wasn't black in here, we'd put in 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 in here, or we'd move all of these sliders down to 0. But either way, we select black. We're going to make a new layer. We're going to choose the foreground colour, which in this case is black. And then we go over here where we have the layers, and on top of that we have opacity, and we lower the opacity of this black layer. We might want to put it, and it depends on how much darker we want it, but let's say we put it to 75 or something, and that represents a further away version of the same graphic. All right, well that's like pretty simple so far, but distorting it, it's still simple, but it's a little bit more complicated. So let's make another copy, excuse me. So again, now of course we should be saving as we go, but I'm sort of only demonstrating this, so I'm not going to do that. But always bear in mind, save as you go. Control A, Control C, or Command A, Command C. Create from clipboard, and there we have another version of the same pattern. Now let's get the parallelogram that we need. The easiest way to do this might be to just copy this layer. So we go again, Command A, Command C, create from clipboard, zoom in a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to paste this. Actually, didn't need to create it. I could have done it from the original. But anyway, we're going to paste this artwork into this file, and then we're going to distort it using a tool called perspective. And I'll show you how we do that. So we go Command A, again Command A or Control A, depending on what computer you're on. You could go Command C. I would go Command X, which means cut. And the reason for that is to remind myself that I don't need this file anymore because it's going to be in here. We cut it into there, and then it has this, when you paste something in, you have to right click on the layer and choose to new layer before you can do anything with it. Now obviously that's no good, but we're going to distort it. I'll show you what we do. So, but first I would get rid of this because we don't want to start having, we're going to have multiple windows and we want to have as few as possible so that we don't get confused as to which ones we're still keeping. All right, so the tool that we need, once we make sure we've got this layer, the tool that we need is in Tools, Transform Tools, Perspective. And it appears, 4 diamonds appear on the corners, and the way it works is you move them around and that will distort this picture in ways that sort of resemble moving it in 3 dimensions. Like all of those pictures look like they're tilting it in different ways. So sometimes you might find that this perspective, this little window thing that comes up, is in the way. And if that's the case, you click this detach dialog from canvas and it turns it into a thing that you can move around, so you can just move it out of the way. All right, so what we're going to do is move this picture so that the corners of the picture are the corners of the parallelogram, if that makes sense. Oops, hang on, sorry. I've got to sort of do it bit by bit. So that one goes roughly there, and that one goes roughly there, and then we can sort of, okay, that looks about right, but if it's wrong, we'll just try again. So we change it to that, and then we go transform, and you can see that unfortunately now we should move this below that because, and just see if it's, the main problem that we're going to have is if it doesn't quite go up to the boundaries and there's a sort of empty space, but it looks like we don't have that. I'll just go layer to image size so that yellow thing isn't there, and yeah, that looks about right. Unfortunately, it seems to automatically do the cubic interpolation. So we have to spend a little bit of time adjusting it by hand. Well, I mean, we could leave it like that, but I think that looks a bit messy. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change it so that it's only, so like this one, it's only got the dark grey and the light grey. It doesn't have any sort of intermediate colours as it currently does. So I'm going to do a bit of a time lapse. I'm going to stop recording. I'll do that, and then I'll start recording when that's finished. Okay, I eventually decided that leaving the different shades of grey might actually be the best result. I wasn't getting very good results trying to turn it into two colours again. So also, as soon as I pressed stop, I realised that I'd used the wrong word. I'd said time lapse, which of course would mean that I was showing you what I was doing sped up. What I meant was I was going to stop recording and then start recording again. But anyway, so yeah, I've decided to go with this as is. So we'll delete the other. Oops, sorry. We'll delete the other layer and crop to content. And if I hadn't already saved it, I would save it as that. All right. So we need to do the same, of course, to the smaller parallelogram, and we need to do a larger version for this one. This one's a bit trickier because we've got to sort of estimate where the other side of the corner is. But I won't show you those because it's just the same process. What we need to do once we've got everything, sorry, and I also should say we might want to put a filter over it, similar to this one, presumably because this one, I'll show you how they interact. This one is for pictures like that. This one is for pictures like this. So if we give this one 75% darkness, we might want to give this one slightly less because it would be on average closer. So we might want to go. Sorry, we need to get black as one of the possibilities. We might want to go 50% instead of 75%, for example. The other thing we would need to do is we would need to cut. We wouldn't want this bit to be more black, the bit that's not the wall. So we just have to get into the layer that is the wall. Oops. Select those parts, get back to the black layer and cut those parts so that they don't darken the bit around it. All right. So what I'll show you now is pasting stuff. So I'll only show you one because it all works the same. You can't control copy because that only copies one layer. So you'd only copy the filter or you'd only copy the pattern. What you need to do is either merge down the two layers and then Control A, Control C, or you, instead of saving it, export it as a PNG file or whatever, JPEG, but I use PNGs, and then you can load that up and copy it. But either way, let's say that we choose to merge down. I go Control C, and then I can unmerge the layers. And I want to find the layer where it's going to be, and there's three different ones. But so we'll start with F. I control. Oops, sorry, I got confused. I start with FF. I paste it. I make it a new layer. I move it down till it's under the layer that I want, and then I merge down so that they become a single layer. However, that's not the only place where this one is going to be. It's also going to be on the front of FFR, on this bit of FFR, and also on this bit of FFL. So I need to do the same thing twice again. I paste it. I move that layer down until it's just below the one that I'm merging it with. And I, of course, now what have I done here? Oh, I see, right. Sorry, I should say that when let's go back a few steps. Okay, this layer, when you merge down, it will take the name of the lower layer, which will be pasted layer because it's the pattern. So you need to remember to rename it back to the more meaningful names that you're using. Okay, so to get back to it, let's say I want to go FFR. So I paste, I turn that to a new layer, I move it till it's in the right place. Oops. I move this under FFR, and then I merge down, and then I rename that FFR before I forget, because otherwise we'll have all of these layers called pasted layer, and it'll become a little confusing. And then I have to do it to the other side and so on, but I won't show you every single step. And once you've done that, we'll have all the blocks filled in, as in they won't just have their outlines, they'll also have their patterns. Now we also need to do a smaller and a larger version of this, but again, that's pretty mechanical, so I won't bother showing it to you. I hope this was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.